Hello and welcome to Turn Zero Loss. Today we are going to discuss a certain game involving a bunch of different factions and why that the Necrovirus is the best virus and the best faction. So all glory to the Necrovirus, and we will rule the world one day.
We're talking about Dune today. Okay, I got you. I got you.
Run world. We're actually talking about Twilight Imperium. So we managed to play a couple games, or I guess a game and a half maybe, of Twilight Imperium. This is kind of like our post-mortem on that, and kind of discussing our thoughts on the game, what we liked, what we didn't like, and what we really messed up on. Kind of like a cautionary tale for those trying to learn the game. So, yeah. Sherry, why don't you kick us off with your thoughts on the game a little bit?
Well, number one, I really like these really long games that involve a lot of thinking, even though I'm not the best at them. And somehow Claw was somehow going to win the second game that we didn't finish. But
That's debatable.
I know, honestly, we were amassing armies pretty quickly, but it's a game that once you get the vibe of it and like the turn orders and all of that, you start understanding. Oh, there's strategy in every play. Everything you do matters, and that's what I really like, because in some games you have to find out the hard way that doing this strategy doesn't actually work, whereas TI gives you kind of like the openness of like, let's try this strategy, or maybe we need to focus more into technology, or go for the more war centered approach, or going virus and messing around with political intentions.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of interesting ways you could take the game. War is definitely a big part of it, obviously, just because like you're building armies all the time and things are constantly moving around you. So like your best laid plans are always going to go awry. You know, you could have the perfect idea that you're going to do for this round, and then somebody goes and does something that's like, well, fuck you. So we definitely felt that a little bit. I personally enjoy like the overall strategy aspect and trying to plan out whether it be you're just trying to go for objectives purely, or if you're actually trying to conquer other people's locations pretty quickly, just so that way you can have more resources than others. There's a lot of strategy behind that kind of thought process, and even overall, just like the war combat itself is a little bit crunchy, but I kind of liked it.
I liken this game to a war game in which going to war is a very bad idea most of the time. It's because of how much risk it carries for everyone involved. Like
Yeah,
the few times we got into a big conflict during both games, everyone lost a lot. So it's not necessarily in your best interest to go to war in every situation.
except for me in the first game where I had a war sun that hit on a one.
Yeah, yeah, that happened. I appreciate this game for elegance of it. And I don't say elegance very often, but the actual like mechanical action of doing what you need to do is very simple. You just take a token, you place it on the board, and based on that, you get certain actions you can do.
Hmm.
It's simple. It's understandable. It's trackable. It reads well, and it adds more layers of strategy.
Yeah,
The simplicity is appreciated.
yeah, it's also the kind of the modulation with each different factor. Like, for example, the second game that we played, I was playing as the Necrovirus, which basically turns a lot of things on its head. That's the anti-tech. It's weird. It's very pro technology, but anti-technology at the same time. The race that I was playing, if I were to research technology, I get command tokens instead, which is essentially another form of currency in the game for action economy. So my rounds can actually go a lot longer than other people's before we go through another selection of who's getting what. What were those called? Those action
Tactical
cards,
actions.
tactical actions. So it's each of the races kind of has their own thing that they do and kind of specialize in
Or sorry, those were strategic actions. Sorry.
strategic actions. Yep. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think like the overall round layout is simple at its core, but the actual intricacies of the rules themselves are a little complicated. So like there are a lot of times as we're sitting there trying to figure things out where we're looking down, looking at the rule book, and we're like, well, the rule reads like this, but there's no like clarification on it. So what do we do? So in that moment, we just have to be like, well, I guess we'll just go rule as written and try not to interpret it too badly. Like it, I don't know. The rules are mostly well written, mostly clear. There's just a couple things that kind of got flubbed up in the first game that screwed me over in the first game, and then in the second game screwed my fiance over. So halfway through the game, we both learned one rule that we were missing that screwed us both over because she was playing by the rules that were supposed to be done, and while the rest of us were cheating. Because what had happened was we were basically there's a capacity limit in the rule book that allows you to when you're making new troops or making new units, there's a certain limit to that you can hit when you do that production action. And as you're doing that, you have to keep that in mind because it's all dictated by your space docks that allow you to produce a certain number of units. And if you go over that unit count, you're not allowed to produce any more units. So you basically get to that limit and it's supposed to stop. We didn't read it as that. We read that as, oh, that gives us additional production units to be able to make even more resources. So Sherry, David, and I had massive armies, like huge
Like
military
disgusting
forces.
armies.
Yeah. And we were
And I
about
was ready to
just
build more.
we were full sending, ready to go to war, and my fiance is sitting over there with like a couple warships and some fighters. So like it just wasn't fair. It would have been completely unbalanced, and for us to roll back the game from that state, we basically would have had to restart. So we had to quit halfway through the second game of us trying to play this. But with us now having a better understanding of the rules, I think the next time we play, whatever that's going to be, we'll go a little smoother.
Yeah, I think that's like, I think part of the problem with the rules is this game is really only enjoyed by, I wouldn't say one certain group of people, but you have people who tend to overthink things who probably enjoy this game a lot because every action matters. And the rules being basically almost a rules as written situation, we always read deeper into things than we need to. So if they would have just said, hey, this is exactly how it probably would have been a little bit easier for us to understand. Or just we can't read. That's the other possibility.
I mean, we're engineers and somebody that's close to an engineer, but we can't read. You kidding me?
Indeed. Reading is for the weak.
They should have done a flow chart. Why'd they have to actually put it in writing?
Yeah, I know, right? Would have been easier. Regardless, was there any other aspects that you guys saw that kind of like stood out as glaringly not good about the game? Or things that
It's
you
long.
prefer?
It's really long. Like, because our first completed game took us, I want to say, like 8 to 9 hours to complete.
Mm-hmm.
And the first 3 rounds lasted about 4.5 hours.
Yeah. Although, admittedly, that was a lot of us just learning how things worked and how to put things into practice. The second game we played, the first 3 rounds went by in like 2 hours.
Yeah, it was a little bit faster, but still very long game.
We didn't even make it to agenda phase either,
Yeah.
which probably would have extended it by at least another 10 minutes per round.
Yep.
Especially with the race I was playing, making your votes even matter more because that means I get to I would get free stuff.
Yeah. The faction powers definitely have an impact on your time because you have to be very careful about taking certain actions in making deals with certain players. Like for instance, the second game I was playing, I was Hakan Emirates and I was making profit every time trade went up. Like every time that card got flipped, I just got a bunch of commodities and I immediately went to work trading, and that adds a lot of time to a lot of turns as well.
Yep. Yeah, we I don't know, like I like long board games like this, but I can't do it too often, obviously. Like if we tried to play this every weekend, I would probably want to rip somebody's head off. Cuz it takes just over an hour to set this game up alone. Like it's ridiculous just how much goes into setup and then how much goes into actually like deciding which faction you want to be a part of, deciding the colors, deciding getting all the cards passed out for each faction, making sure you have all the right planets. It's a lot. And it only becomes more complicated the more players you have. So 4 players I think is about the sweet spot for me. If we added a 5th player, I don't know if I'd want to play the game anymore.
I have played 6-player TI before here in Madison, and I do have to say the game is pretty wild at 6. Like you may
I do
actually rethink that statement.
Okay.
I do want to play at 6 because I actually do have issues with the 4-player just because of the basic setup, like the basic world structure.
Mm,
There is advantageous positions based on where you are sitting.
right.
Which in 6-player it's not as apparent because you're basically on each point of the hexagon, which
Yeah.
makes it like, yeah, you are always within 2 hexes of this or this. Whereas one side of the board is more multi-planet, which requires inherently a little more resources for you to colonize or to put troops down. Whereas some of the other ones are single planet, which is inherently a little bit better because you only have to put in half as many troops on the ground.
It also depends on what factions you're playing as well. Like some factions obviously have a technological focus, so they want to get more resources. Some are more politically minded, so they rush Mechatol Rex and they gather all the influence. And if they get on a spot that's advantageous towards that, it makes their early game startup engine much stronger.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see if we can get other people to convince to play this game. I think the only other two people that we could try to rope in would be two of my fiance's friends that live relatively nearby, but it would take a lot more coordinating than the normal, hey guys, come on over, let's play this game.
Yeah. Well, in fairness, we do know other people who would, but they definitely live further out.
Yeah. I mean,
So-
I think Justin would be willing to play, and then maybe if we could get...
If Casey was ever up here, he would definitely be up for it.
He would always be up for it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah,
But
and and with my new place, I'll have a giant basement that we can do it in, so we actually have even more space.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'd give the game probably like an 8.5 out of 10. Like, it's a pretty good game. It's not a perfect game by any means. It scratches the itch of war games that I need, but that's I think it's about as far as I'd go.
I want to play Eclipse, a Second Sun, or Second Dawn of the Galaxy, just to see how this compares. Because I hear Eclipse is a bit more streamlined.
Okay.
But I still really, really like this game a lot. I'm very high on it.
If you had to give it a score out of 10, what would you give it?
I'd give it a space line out of 10.
Got it. It's a good rating.
See, I'm a little higher on the game. I just think that it's with a game with this many moving parts, the fact that it works the fact that
it works as well as it does
is kind of amazing, because I know that usually when processes are assembled, some things get more attention than the others, whereas when they were building this out, everyone was paying attention across the board. Like you have even within your factions, you kind of have like your glass cannon type factions, you have your just solely combat based factions, you have tech factions, and obviously trade factions like you were playing the Imperium or Emirates. I can't
Space
remember
Lions.
which one.
Space Lions. Yeah, I mean it's like there's a lot of different ways you could take the game. Obviously, we still have some more experimentation to go with this game before we can like fully understand which ones are our favorite factions to play as. And I think over time we're gonna learn to just be like, all right, we're all gonna randomly assign ourselves a faction, so that way there's no like inherent advantage for one team versus another.
Yeah, good thing we have a bunch more factions now that I have the Prophecy of the Kings expansion.
God.
Boy, complicate the game further. Let's go.
When we play our third game, we will not introduce that, but we will be building our own galaxy.
Boy,
I can accept that.
Fun.
I accept it. It's just going to be an interesting time.
Yeah, apparently the Prophecy of the King also adds some more things to the game, and we've never done promissory notes either, which I am semi interested in doing.
That's true. I've seen that called out in the rules a few times, so we'd have to definitely understand what that means before we actually introduce it, because obviously my fiance is still understanding the basics of the game, and if we add something else to it, we got to make sure it's clear and understood this time before we just go full send into it.
Promissory notes are pretty sweet. So
yeah, is it like basically promises of actions or whatever you'll do later on, or
essentially, yeah, it's an enforceable contract between players that you trade off.
Yeah, that it kind of mixes the political and the negotiation aspect of that, because as people who are probably listening to this know, TI, I have literally sat there and been like, oh, I messed up like 3 turns ago. I should have done this. And I'd be in
Yeah.
a much better position. And it's not even you facing off against someone else. It could be, I move this out of order. I could have colonized a little bit better, or my movement could have been more efficient so that I would have more movement this turn.
I think my biggest beef with this game is that it kind of falls into the same trap that diplomacy does, which is there is the potential for endless negotiations.
Yeah,
And there is a couple times where there's glares across the table.
Huh?
for sure.
Absolutely. If you're not glaring across the table at your greatest enemy, why are you even playing this game?
I mean, like, if you don't have a greatest enemy while you're playing the game, why are you even playing the game? Because, like, every single time we play, somebody at the table becomes my worst enemy.
It's only inevitable, really.
It's most certainly always you.
Yeah, that's about right.
I don't know. I was gearing up for a major.
You're gearing up for a major offensive. You have been everyone's enemy.
Yes.
Yeah, I was
Absolutely.
yeah, it was like, honestly, I'm sad that we ended the game where we did in the second one, because it was we were at where the political tension, like, we were playing, like, for example, Hearts of Iron 4, the world tension was at like 98%.
All it would take all of them would take was somebody lay on Mechatol to really get it going.
I was going to
Yeah,
be going for Mechatol the next round.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why I thought, and that's why I was moving my forces in as a full frontal defense to your invasion.
Yeah, I think me and Sherry were both ready to blockade you effectively for Mechatol, because I was going to
Yeah.
cut you off from reinforcements.
Yeah, what I was expecting you to do was to move in behind him, and I was gonna block him from my quadrant. Granted,
Yeah.
he still had the ability to escape through Bree's side, but I think Bree was
I think Bree would have probably caught it.
Yeah.
Because she had superior movement. So
yeah, she moved a lot quicker. Like, whatever. It's weird. She always gets the weirdly beneficial, like, factions.
mhm.
She gets either I start first, always,
or I move faster than everyone.
without question.
Yeah.
Yeah, she definitely has gotten the more straightforward faction powers.
Yeah, I don't know. My last game, I didn't really like my faction too much. It was kind of because the role style of play that they want you to do is you basically just move your home base everywhere. Because I didn't get to do it, but for that faction, my space docks existed in space, not on the planets, so I can move the space docks as if they were ships.
Ooh, that's a deliciously appealing power.
Yeah, I didn't get to really use it just because like we were too busy just kind of gearing up for war. But in the future, if I play that faction again, I think I'll probably get a little bit more use out of it.
Right.
Yeah. Did you want to switch out your faction for our next game? Because we wanted. Yeah, I know I wanted to stay the same because the necrovirus is really cool, and honestly, it's super glass cannony and super fun.
We didn't get to see it much during the game. Like
we got to see you build really, really, really large army that didn't have as much power as us because we could have upgraded our shit before you did. But
yeah, but also I had unlimited command tokens. So
yeah, that's true. You had basically infinite actions.
Yeah, I'll research technology. I can't research technology, but that means I get more command tokens. So my army can be infinitely big, and I have I can decide when the round ends, basically.
Yeah, it's upsetting deeply. Like, it was because I don't think any of us really tried to take. Speaker definitely got taken in that game, didn't it? Like, it got moved around like once, maybe that second game.
A couple times.
Okay.
Yeah, because I know once you guys realized that it's like number one, I should never have the.
You should never be given leadership ever.
I should not. So it's like I don't need it. Basically, you guys realize that there's two things I can't have in combination. One is the leadership to give me command tokens, and the other one is technology because I get more command tokens.
Yep.
Yeah. But I really like the way that we've been deciding how we do this is randomly rather than like I randomly got the necrovirus. Granted, it was the one I really wanted, but the random number generator actually succeeded this time.
Yeah,
that it did.
Worked in your favor for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's some I'm excited to play, but I need to really read them and sit down with them to know for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got I've got some work to do and see if there's any other factions that really tickle my interests, you know. But
Pick a weird one. Pick the one with
I-
a lot of rules text on there. That's what mine does.
I kind of want to do that. And then I still want to. And there's other games I still got to learn the rules for. God, there's so much coming up for us. We got some campaign games to wrap up before we can even think about trying to do another TI session, I think.
Yeah, we got
I think our
some
next
more.
meetup, we're really gonna hammer in Dilemma. I think we're getting fairly close.
We've already completed one of the storylines, so that's a good start.
Mhm. I mean, I think we're actually pretty close on a lot of them.
I think so too.
To completion. So maybe
Yeah,
next time
and
we meet
we're-
up, we just blitz it.
Yeah,
We'll see.
we either do that or spend a lot of time in Gloomhaven, so we can move to the ultimate game, the big box of doom, Frosthaven.
Fear.
Yeah. That'll be a good time. That'll be a real good time. I like it.
That'll be good. But yeah,
Anyway,
fear.
any other last minute thoughts about TI?
Yeah, never let the guy in Mechatol Rex ever, 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 and ever, ever get the Imperial card. Ever.
Oh, definitely not.
Because I think I scored like 4 or 5 points off that card
You did.
in the first game.
That's how you won the first game, is you just had so many Imperial cards.
Yeah, I just sat in Mechatol Rex. I was allowed to draft Imperial constantly, and I ended up, as a result, winning.
This should go without saying. Unless your faction does technology differently, like the Necrovirus, technology is probably the most valuable card.
Yeah. Other than, I think the only other one that would be more valuable would be leadership, just to get you tokens on your strategy token pool. So that way, if somebody is trying to use the technology, you could also use it, because you need to make sure you have resources on hand available for you to research technology whenever somebody does it too.
In addition, leadership also gives you the priority in turn order, which can very much matter.
It does long term. I would also say that anyone trying out this game, granted, this isn't a game that you probably just buy and then try out because it's expensive, but make it through turn 3. After turn 3, things become a lot quicker. But I will admit that we were ready to rip each other's hair out after turn 3 with the first time we played. So just fight through it. It's going to hurt, but it's worth it.
Suffering is enjoyable.
Well, if that's all we have on this game, let's just give it a little wrap up here. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like. Leave a comment, letting us know how you feel about our thoughts on Twilight Imperium, or if you've ever played it and some personal anecdotes about it yourself. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoy our content, and follow us on X, and we'll see you in the next video.
All hail the space lines.
The Necrovirus is your friend. Invite them in. Open the door.